65% of millennials and 66% of Gen Z plan to switch careers in the coming year. So that's 3 out of 4 people in their late 20s and early 30s that are kind of stuck or adrift in their job title, just direction. I know I've been there. We've got Taylor here today to talk about her story, and it's definitely relatable. And so, we haven't had a conversation about work, about career really yet on this podcast. So excited to dive into it today via Taylor's story. And so, Taylor, can you tell us a little bit about what you're doing now and what you're up to now in terms of career and work?
Yeah, so I've been in the sports media space, I say, for the past 6 or 7 years. And I would like to say that I'm still in it to some extent, but just not to the extent that I was in it up until last fall. So I had worked in sports broadcasting for TV stations full time, and it was very demanding. It really was my entire life. And the past, I guess, 10 months now, I've taken a step back from that, and really I've been just trying to figure out what it looks like moving forward, and have been trying a bunch of different things because I still do have a lot of passion for media and for broadcasting, telling stories. I think that's the biggest thing, but trying to figure out the way that is best suited for not only the impact that I want to make, but also for my own lifestyle that I want to live, because the way I was operating in my career was so demanding to the point where it felt like you said, I was stuck, and that my career was the only thing that I could focus on in my entire life. And I know that there are other ways, and I see other people that are able to find more of a balance in doing what they love, but doing it in a little bit of a different way. So over the past year, I've done more of what we call freelance in the industry rather than having like a full-time job in broadcasting, having opportunities to just report on one game here or there, a slate of games, and taking them on one by one rather than being consumed 24/7, 365 by whatever game is going on in that moment and having your entire life revolve around it, which has been cool. And it's also been just a different type of broadcasting that I've been able to dive into. And then I've also started a podcast,
Let's go.
which has been really fun. And it's interesting because I've always loved the podcast space, but just never really had time to dive into it. I think that podcasting has such a great reach and impact, especially amongst young people, but really all ages, I think, can kind of dive into the podcast space. It's very like user friendly, I guess. And you can, listen to a podcast in your car, listen to your podcast when you're doing chores around the house or whatever it is. And there's a lot of creative freedom with that I didn't necessarily feel in my full-time job. I'm able to tell stories kind of the way I want to, expand on things that I care about more, and feel more purpose in what I'm doing in the sports media space. So that's really what I've been up to, kind of navigating what it looks like moving forward, because I still do have a lot of love for storytelling in sports, and trying to figure out the best way for me to do that moving forward. So I've really been enjoying doing the podcast space and a little bit of content creation on social media. So that's where I'm at now.
Did you always know you wanted to be in sports as a broadcaster?
It's a funny question because no, I was the kid who had no idea what I wanted to do. When I was in high school, I didn't even know what I wanted to major in when I was going into college. So I was applying to the most broad, like liberal arts schools so that I could go and choose when I got there. I was kind of all over the map. But when I look back, it all makes sense that I landed here. I've always been super passionate about sports, always loved sports. I was a cheerleader, so I was always involved in the sports space, and always loved communications, or I felt like I was good at it as well. Writing, public speaking. I was the person that in public speaking class wanted to public speak. Everyone else was nervous, and I was excited to be there and would volunteer like at church when I was younger to do reading parts. And I did the announcements in my middle school, like calling people's buses and stuff. Like I always was very comfortable in those spaces. And then I think something that I've mentioned to you before, but looking back, like I was never good at basketball. I love basketball. I know basketball, but I was never good at playing it. But all my friends in middle school were. And so they would all want to play basketball, like pickup games and stuff. And I'd be around and I was not going to try to play with these people. And so I would just do, on the side, like a little play-by-play and to be involved. And it's just so interesting that I landed in this sports media space. I also, would write stories as a kid just for like fun. I'd sit on my laptop and like write books, like novels. I say that, but
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's putting the pieces together later and realizing that all of my like skills and interests lined up to point me in this direction. I just didn't always see it.
No, it's a great point. I mean, so you've been doing broadcasting for 6 years, right? Mm-hmm. You're 30, is that right?
30, yeah.
So you started this when you were like 24.
Okay, so maybe 7 years.
Okay.
Because I was 23 when I started full time.
Okay.
22 when I went to school for it.
Okay.
So
yeah,
I guess I'm just wrong.
No, you're good. So talk to me a little bit about, because you didn't go to college to become a broadcaster, right? You kind of figured that out a little bit later. Mm-hmm. What were you doing? Kind of what was the plan maybe in college? It sounds like you maybe didn't have a plan.
Yeah.
But, that I think something that's relatable for a lot of people is like the end of college era. Well, this has been great. I had a lot of fun. Mm-hmm. I've gotten this degree in something, but now I got to actually go out and do it and have a job and be professional, all that stuff. And so what was that era, even bleeding into, maybe the first year post undergrad? What was all of that like for you?
So I ultimately landed on communications and journalism as my undergrad major. I went to UConn. And the whole plan while I was there was to go into more of like a PR, corporate communications, just what everybody kind of does after they graduate when they major in communications. I chose communications because, again, that's where my skills were. And I felt like it was broad enough where it gave me a lot of options of what I could do afterwards. And I had an aunt, I still do, but she works in fashion communications. And she was an executive for this company, and I knew that I could intern with her and that could get my foot in the door. And I did like fashion, so I thought maybe I would go into like a fashion PR, fashion communications type role. And so I did that. I pursued that. After I graduated, I started working for actually a fashion magazine for a little bit. The fashion magazine actually folded. It went under. And it's back around now, just like more digital, which is cool to kind of see the evolution. But we were at this very pivotal point in media where a lot of like the print traditional media forms were dying and everything was going more like digital and social, and people didn't really understand what to do. It was like the rise of the influencers and everything. And so I ended up then going to work in advertising for a big media company in New York. And all throughout just really started to have this thought of, am I going to do this for the rest of my life? Like I just wake up, go to work 5 days a week, live for the weekend, live for, getting home late at night and doing it all again the next day and feeling like I'm just on this hamster wheel that never stops. And I started to see, I think through social media, honestly, other people pursuing broadcasting that were like me, my age, my background, and realizing that it could be a real career. I will say I also took one class my senior year at UConn that kind of lit the spark for broadcasting to me, but I just felt like it was too late. I had already done these internships in fashion. I'd already set myself up to go and be in fashion PR. And mind you, I'm 21 years old and I'm saying it's too late. I can't get an internship after I graduate in broadcasting. Like I need to go work. I need to, have a job. I can't just, backtrack, and all those internships would have been for nothing. And this is all what's going through my head. But the thought was always there in the back of my mind. And as I'm, sitting on this commute, I'm commuting to New York City, 2 hours door to door every day. So there was a lot of like pondering life on that train. And I remember just having a moment where I was like, okay, am I going to do this? If I'm going to decide to pursue broadcasting, I am going all in Like I have to decide right now, am I fully trying to dive into this, or am I not really fully dedicated to it? And in that split moment, I was like, I'm going to do it. And I felt excitement. I didn't feel any anxiety about it. It just felt like, okay, like I'm going to do this. I'm going to figure out what the plan is. I'm going to pursue this. And that's what led me to going back to grad school to hone in on my skills in broadcasting and then ultimately pursue my career in broadcasting. So graduated from undergrad in 2017. From 2017 to 2018, I was working in New York. And then summer of 2018, I went back to school, graduated the following May of 2019. And then summer of 2019 was when I started my job in broadcasting, my first job full time. So,
Yeah, and so many thoughts just as you're explaining that. One was J.K. Rowling actually thought of Harry Potter on a train. And I have this, I talk about doing nothing. I think doing nothing is so important for us because we're constantly so many inputs and we don't have time to hear ourselves think. And so J.K. Rowling actually, especially back then, I don't know what the year was, but she thought of the idea of Harry Potter on like a 4-hour train ride and figured this whole thing out. And my point in saying that is that sometimes those forced moments of quiet, like you had, really do show you kind of maybe those thoughts that you've been avoiding, and you just have time to kind of do nothing in that. But you talked about being all in as well. Why do you think, especially with work, why is that so important?
I think in order to know if something's going to work and achieve a certain level of success in something, you need to be committed. And I also think there's a lot of like the mental side of it, of knowing like if at the beginning you're giving yourself outs, you're going to probably take them when things get hard. So I would say, at least for myself, going all in allowed me to push through the hard times. And it started right away. Like I got to USC and our first assignment was like the most embarrassing thing. And I just vividly remember doing this assignment. Like I had to go to the streets because my degree was general journalism. So what I was getting my master's in. So I was having to do like newsy man on the street type stuff. It wasn't just, covering sporting events. And that made me very uncomfortable. But I remember just thinking like, you just moved all the way across the country. You're going to go to downtown Los Angeles and you're going to talk to people on the street for 5 minutes. Like this will be over so quick. But I think if I had not fully committed in the way that I did, I would have given up then. Like there were so many moments where I could have just given up on something, and pushing through those moments of uncomfortability is so important. And I think that in order to have the strength to do that is to fully dive in. And I also think just like surrendering to, for me, like it was always just knowing, and feeling that this was a desire that God put on my heart and that I was going to fully dive into it and that he was going to make the path clear, And I feel like that definitely happened for me throughout my journey, even if it means I'm not meant to end up in this forever,
Yeah. No, I think you nailed it. I think, it reminds me of like, don't half-ass it, and that's something that stood out to me because, talking about sports, I think is a good one. I sports. I've coached sports and I've been a player through my college career. And so I relate it to that example of, working throughout the course of a season. Seasons are long. Seasons can be hard. And there's times where you do want to throw in the towel, where you got like, we haven't won a game in a week and I haven't gotten a hit in 4 games, and it's so hard. And you have a choice in that moment of like pushing through it and figuring it out, or you can kind of throw in the towel where like, we're not going to win the championship this year. This is just a bad year for me. Like I'm going to kind of call it, and you don't push through it. And then season ends, and a day, a week, a month, 6 months, 6 years later, you're like, oh man, I wish I I wish I gave it my all, because I didn't find out. I think that's what it is. It's like you have to find out yes or no, right? To relate it back to you, you're getting into broadcasting and you're still not 100% sure this is right. You think it's right. You're doing all the things, but if you're not all in and it fails or it doesn't work out, then you question, well, is this just not the thing, or is it because I didn't go for it? I wasn't all in. And I feel like that's something that scared me. It's tying in regret to all this. But I think that's something that I've thought about is I need to find out if quarter life clarity is a thing, if called up coaching, previous like coaching business that I started, like that didn't work out, but I was okay with it not working out because I knew I gave it my absolute all, and I explored all these avenues, and it was like, all right, well, I found out. I didn't half-ass it. And I feel like that's just an important thing with life, but also career.
A quote that you just made me think of is, the most successful people fail more than anyone else because they try more than anyone else.
That's so good.
And if you knew, okay, you're one failed business away from, success, like ultimate success, you would be like, okay, I can't wait to like fail at this next one so I can get to the successful one. And I think everything is building blocks. Like you take things from every thing that you do that leads you to ultimately where you're supposed to be in your purpose and success.
So why did you ultimately leave that whole world? Because it was everything that you were building up to that point. Like you were doing it, and then it was just like, at some point you probably had that feeling of, well, this isn't it anymore, so now what do I do?
I would say it was years in the making, to be honest. I lived for a long time with the feeling that once I make it, once I'm successful, once I get there, I'll be able to be happy and I'll like my life and I'll love my job and I'll be proud of what I'm doing. And I was going through my broadcasting journey and I just felt like, there were moments where I felt those ways. I felt happy, I felt proud, I felt accomplished, I felt successful. But overall, I didn't feel that way the majority of the time. And as I was going along, the way broadcasting, it probably will help if I describe like kind of the way it works. Yeah. But typically, if you want to be on TV, which when I got into the business, my ultimate goal was to be, Erin Andrews, sideline reporter. Love her. She's amazing. But a sideline reporter for the NFL, right? And so the way you traditionally do that is you start out in a small city, on TV at a local news station as the sports anchor, sports reporter. You're covering high school sports. We would do like a Friday night football show where we're showing highlights of like the local high school kids. And it's really just almost like a training ground because you need to get comfortable on air. You need to find your voice. You need to be able to make mistakes, get someone's name wrong or, lose track of where you are in the highlight, something that you can't do if you're on ESPN Sports Center. You can't, butcher a name or, you'll get fired for that, right? So you go to a small city and we work on contracts. So, I left my school. I got a 2-year contract offer in Palm Springs, California at a local TV station, worked there for 2 years. That contract's winding down. I decide I want to, continue to move. And that's always the plan. Like you never really kind of choose to stay, I would say, in that spot unless you love it and you're from there or something. Typically people will, do their 2 years and then look for a medium-sized city and then a big city and then hopefully like make the leap to national. And now with, digital media and stuff, there are a lot of different ways that you can do it too. Like you can work for a team or something like that. But I went the live TV route out of advice from mentors. And I feel like it was what I needed to do just to get that live TV experience. Because a lot of times, like if you work for a team, you're not necessarily on live television. Everything's pre-taped. So you don't have that pressure of having to just, talk and figure it out and have things go wrong on live television and react, which has happened to me plenty of times. And it's actually funny now. But you just get better. Like nothing ever goes perfect. You just get better at dealing with it. So did my 2 years in Palm Springs, started looking for jobs, networking. A lot of it is networking because it is so competitive. and ended up getting a job offer in Providence, Rhode Island, moved there, took that job. It was a really rough start for a lot of different reasons. That's like a whole other story. So I won't even, talk about that. But I will say, like, that's when I really started the thought process of, okay, why am I doing this? Does it really matter that much to me? Because I'm working every weekend at this point. For 4 years straight, I worked every Friday and Saturday, 3 to midnight. If I wanted a day off on the weekends, I had to use PTO. And my first 2 years in California, I think I had like 5 PTO days a year. Jeez. So I used those for going home for Christmas, which was the only holiday that I ever got off, by the way. Jeez. And when you're younger and you're building your career, you make sacrifices and you know, okay, this isn't going to be forever. But I think when I got to Rhode Island, I really started to question, how long can I actually do this? And am I going to make it? So I kind of just, I guess, put pressure on myself in that moment to say, okay, after this contract is up, if I don't move on to something or I don't get this like great big break or this great offer, I think I have my answer. Because the thought of going from where I was in Rhode Island and then moving to another city and starting at the bottom of the totem pole again, being the youngest person, the new person who had to work every weekend, every holiday, also being far away from family. I was lucky in Rhode Island that I was close. So that if I was off on a Monday and Tuesday, I could come home and like see my mom or, whatever. But I started to have those like real conversations with myself of, okay, how long do I actually want to do this? Because every time I choose to take a new job and I choose to pursue this, it's a contract. Like I'm signing a 2 to 3 year contract and I'm choosing to go live in a place and start my life over every 2 to 3 years. And so that kind of was in the back of my mind, but I didn't completely shut the door because I did have a lot of faith again that if it was meant for me and I was meant to go down this path, like God was going to open a door. So as my 2-year contract is coming to an end, I had told them, you couldn't just give your 2 weeks. You had to give them like months in advance notice that you were going to not re-sign a contract. So I had given them my notice. I was looking for jobs both in the industry and outside of the industry and kind of felt like, okay, I'm, giving this up to God. Like whatever I'm meant to do, it's going to be clear, whether it's in more of a corporate space, utilizing the skills that I have, or it's going to be, another broadcasting job that feels right. Because every job I had gotten to that point felt like I know that this is where I'm supposed to be. Like there was never a question, never a doubt. Even taking the Rhode Island job, which ended up being like a huge test for me, but it, produces good fruit, so we're good. But actually literally my last day, this is insane. My last day, I'm about to leave without a job. This is 2023. So I had already braced myself for the leaving, right? In 2023. My boss, so my director, the sports director who I reported to, told us that he was going for a job in Boston and that he was potentially going to be leaving. And my big boss, so like the boss above him, called me into his office on my last day and was like, hey, this just feels crazy that our director might leave and you're here. Like we have you in our building and we really like you. We think you can do the job, the bigger job, the promotion. Would you be interested at all? If he ends up getting this job and leaving, would you be interested in staying and being the sports director? And I said, I would definitely be open to a conversation about it once we know what happens with him. And that was like a full on, I'm completely like, all right, I'm surrendering this. If this is meant to be, I knew like the timing was just too crazy. And my prayers at the time were like, God, please make it just easy and obvious, easy and obvious, easy and obvious. Which one of my friends came from one of my friends. And I was like, I like that. I'm going with that, like just make it easy and obvious where like, I know that this is from you and I know this is what you want me to do. Right. And so I felt like if I get this promotion, like this is just the craziest timing and circumstances, like this is where you want me to be. Right. And so it ended up happening a week or 10 days or something after I left my job. I get a call that the other guy ended up getting the Boston job and that they wanted to hire me back as the director. And so I think I was out of a job for 2 weeks. Got to like enjoy. It was in August. I was like, got to enjoy some summer, go to the beach, like, you know, see my friends, all this stuff. And as I moved through the year, I felt more and more like, okay, I'm ready for something else. Like I want more of a work-life balance. Even though I did have that in this new job, you know, I was working Monday through Fridays instead of the weekends. I was able to get most of the holidays off because I was, you know, the top person. But it was just that I had reached the top of this TV station. So I knew if I ever wanted to grow in any way in my career, I was going to have to leave and then go be the bottom person again and like, you know, have to work my way back up and go through this cycle of, you know, working weekends and holidays and all that stuff. And I just felt like I want more to my life. Like if I have a best friend who has a wedding, like I want to know I could go. I want to know I can be there to support my family and my friends when they need it because I value that so much. Like I've always valued family and friends and relationships my entire life. And so it was almost like an identity crisis in a way being in this industry because I loved it on one hand, but then the personal life aspect that it caused me to be in, the way my personal life was structured, was not true to who I was. I was not the person. I was the person that was there for my friends all the time, no matter what. Like I was going to be there. I wasn't going to miss it. I wasn't, you know, and because of this job, I was having to miss stuff. Like I missed my high school best friend's wedding and like, I still feel bad about that to this day. I mean, it was like a destination wedding, so there was a lot more to it, but still, you know, I would have been there if I had a normal like 9 to 5 job and I was able to just take the Friday off and go down for the weekend to where the wedding was. So I think I started to have like, it was like both sides of me were tugging at each other. And ultimately during this time, I feel like it had been building, and I kind of touched on this before, but you see the rise of content creators and podcasters and people like that are operating in the sports space, and they're actually getting opportunities that I feel like I'm working so hard for. And not to discount the work that they're doing, like it's amazing, but it just kind of opened my eyes to what else is out there. Because, okay, these people are creating content or doing podcasts or whatever from their house, and they're getting these opportunities to work with like Major League Baseball or the NFL and go to the Super Bowl and do all these cool things because they're bringing an audience that they've cultivated. And in my head, I'm thinking like, I could do that, you know, if I really wanted to be in this industry. Like this looks like it's the future, because what I'm doing, I don't feel like I'm having that big of an impact. And I feel like I'm kind of a dime a dozen in terms of somebody who can, you know, read the highlights. And not to discount myself. Like, of course, I know that I have storytelling skills and a unique perspective and all of that I bring that's different. You know, everybody's different and everybody has like their superpower of who they are. But in such a competitive space, I just felt this like push to like carve my own path and feel like, if it doesn't work out, I'd much rather it not work out with me carving my own space and really trying to like make it my own, rather than, you know, staying on the hamster wheel and like having my soul die daily.
That reminds me of I think it's Jim Carrey said, you can fail at what you don't want, so you might as well take a chance on doing what you love. And that's like kind of related, because yeah, I mean, there's so much there to unpack. And I think one of the things too is, you know, I've felt that going back to my story of like, if I wasn't here doing this, would anything be different? And it's kind of like that impact question where I was just like in a cubicle working, didn't really feel like this meant anything to anybody, not even really to me. You had more of that love for broad scope sports and what you were doing, but I didn't really feel that. And it was like, well, if I wasn't here, would anything change? And it was like, no. So they'd hire somebody else and they'd be fine. And I feel like that, similar to you, kind of pushed me of like, I want to do my own thing. And yeah, to your point, like if I'm going to fail, I want to kind of fail on my own terms. But I feel like I have a unique difference that I'm missing out on that I just need to explore. And I feel like this is kind of like turning to entrepreneurship a little bit, but I feel like that's a hot topic. It's so like glamorized, I think, these days. And for people that might be thinking like, "Oh, I want to do that. I want to start my own thing. I want to start a podcast. I want to insert your venture here." Like, I think you only know if you want to do that if you have that like almost indescribable urge on the inside that I want to find out more about myself. I want to make an impact in the way that I can only really feel like I make an impact. It's going to be risky. I don't really know. You're not going to have everything figured out, but I don't know if that makes sense, but it's like a weird feeling that you just have of, yeah, I'm not in the right like place, especially
Mm-hmm.
when you do have a relationship with God like you and I both had during each of our respective pivots in
Mm-hmm.
our career. Like you do have that weird sense of peace, I think, once you do it, that yes, this is going to be hard, but it is still correct. Can you talk to me a little bit about that of like once you left
Mm-hmm.
your job, probably like money, the security, all this stuff, you were also at the point where, like you said, you had reached like the top. A lot of people would be like, well, that's awesome. Like
Mm-hmm.
I'd love to hang out here a little bit. What was that like when you did leave after that year? And did you have peace once you left?
I had so much peace about the decision to leave. Like, I never questioned it once. And I think part of it too is like with me, I'm a very like loyal person, almost like to a fault sometimes because like sometimes I can almost do it at the expense of like what's actually best for me.
Hmm.
But I felt like I'm not going to sign a 3-year contract that I don't intend to fulfill, and also that I feel like I could be mentally checked out of. And so I knew that that was going to be the case with that job because, like, while yes, I had reached a very comfortable place that I could have sat in for a long time, I just knew I wanted more for myself. And I knew that the demands of that job was taking time away from me getting started in the desire to start something of my own
Hmm.
because it was really hard to be able to do both because they were so similar in that like your content and your media and all that, and to be able to pour into both to the level that I felt like I wanted to and needed to, it
Hmm.
wasn't going to be possible.
Hmm.
And I just felt a lot of peace because I knew that that's not where I was supposed to be. And
Hmm.
at the time I wasn't fully sure even, and I don't like to ever say never because I mean, tomorrow I could get a call about an incredible broadcast opportunity and maybe I want to jump back into it.
Hmm.
So I don't ever want to like fully close myself off to things because again, it's like whatever God has planned for me. But I would say like the peace that I felt with that, like I just knew it was the right decision, and yeah, I never really looked back, and it might sound crazy. I think some people probably think I'm crazy for making that kind of decision.
Hmm.
But a lot of, I mean, it kind of goes back to what you're saying about like what am I doing, and am I making an impact, right? Like
Hmm.
could I be replaced tomorrow? And I felt like for myself, like in ways I felt like I was making an impact for sure. Especially like within my team that I managed and stuff like that. Like I would hear from people that like I did make an impact and that was great. But in terms of like what I was actually doing and the content that I was putting out and stuff, a lot of times it felt like it was more for me like, and my own love of sports, and almost just sitting in like, wow, it's like so cool that I get to do this and I get to go cover this game and I get to be here and I get to, post a picture of myself on the sidelines and all that. And it just didn't feel right. Like, it didn't feel like what I actually was doing for the job. Like, when I was on TV, that was replaceable. Like me at the end of a Patriots game, we went into the locker room, we interview players, and then we're all standing on the sideline, and it's me and 10 other TV stations that just got the same interviews that are essentially saying the same information. And obviously that's different the higher up you go, because if you're on the TV broadcast for an NFL game, like, you're getting exclusive information, and you are really making a big impact. And you have those relationships where you're, meeting with players and coaches in a more controlled and like private setting, and so you're getting deeper information and things like that. But I just felt like what I was doing for the actual job a lot of times just didn't feel like it was worth what I was giving up to do that job.
I've wrestled with this. It's like work-life balance, which I don't know why I don't like love that saying, but yeah, I mean, I think it's work-life balance versus sacrifices. I mean, I think you touched on so much with your story of climbing the ladder and, making sacrifices to do so and do a good job. But yeah, I'm missing out on all these things with my friends and family. And I think sometimes I would almost say I've had seasons where like you have to do that, and obviously you have too.
I was just about to say, like, this made me think of that. No matter what you do, you have to make sacrifices, right? Like, whether you're starting your own thing, you're making sacrifices in different ways. If you're, doing media in a content creation format, like, you're making sacrifices and potentially missing things. But I think the difference is that you have more freedom over it, over what those sacrifices are, rather than just being on this hamster wheel of it's 24/7, 365, you're always making sacrifices and it never ends. Versus like being able to have more of like maybe a season where you are making a lot of sacrifices, and then a season where maybe you're not. It just, in certain professions, I think in the one that I was in specifically, like being in local news, and a lot of people in local news that I've talked to feel this way. I mean, there are Facebook groups for it. It's crazy. So I never want to seem like the person that's like complaining, but it's like a real thing more so than other industries, because obviously like there's going to be sacrifices with everything when you're trying to pursue success and impact, you know.
Well, especially like you think about it, really, it's like, well, we always have to have something on the TV for people. Like, that's probably why it's so rigid of like, you can't stop. It's not like there's always demand, I guess.
Yeah.
Literally every second of the day. But yeah, I mean, I like to say like entrepreneurship, doing your own thing, working for yourself is great. You get to work whenever you want, but you also work whenever you want. And like, you can take time off. You can, in the middle of the day, you can go get lunch with a friend and do this and do that. But you also can work 7 days a week and like work on Saturday and work on Sunday. You have more freedom, but in some ways you have less freedom. It depends on what you're doing. But I know I felt that of just, you can always be on the clock. And I think especially, I don't know, personally with what I'm doing, and most people that work from home as they're building their business, like, relaxing for me is actually being not at home, which has been like a crazy concept of like, if I'm at home, I can always be working, and I feel like I should always be working. And so when I leave the property of where I live, it's like, all right, well, I can't be working now, so now I can like kind of relax. And I just think it's important to think about. I mean, we're talking about career, we're talking about all this stuff, but there's so many, I think, facets and things that fall into this conversation of, getting to a place where I feel like I'm purposeful and I'm contributing and I'm helping others, I'm making an impact. It's also something that I love to do and don't mind making certain sacrifices for, but some sacrifices I know are off limits. Like there's so much, and I do think just with your 20s especially, it's like you kind of have to taste a little bit of everything, and then figure out at some point down the line your boxes that you want to check just get more and more clear, I think, the more you try things.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I think it's important to be open and try different things, because you never know what might stick, I guess, and I think in your 20s you really do figure a lot of that out, whatever it is, whether it's like career-wise or even just, what you want out of life. You can have moments of clarity, of even just growing up, and like your perspective might be different. And I think that was a hard thing for me with my career, is that I was so passionate, and I'm still very passionate about like my career and sports media, and obviously it looks different for me now, but I think for a long time I had a hard time giving it up, because I felt like, but this was my dream, like this was 22-year-old Taylor's dream, and I'm just like, I'm doing it, and then I'm about to give it up, and I put all this effort and energy and, sacrificed so much to get to the position that I'm in now to make that breakthrough. Like, I'm one interview away. Like some of the jobs that I had talked to of possibilities were like huge jobs that I dreamed of and, didn't work out. But it's like, I'm so close to where I dreamed of being, and I'm having this thought of like going back on it. And sometimes you can like wrestle with yourself of, okay, maybe I just need to like continue chugging along, even though I haven't been happy. But I think as you get older, you have to trust that you know more now than you did. You have more life experience. You're allowed to change. Your dreams are allowed to change, and that's okay.
Yeah, I think it's important to understand when to push or pivot. Like I know I've been there with like between business number one and quarter life clarity. Like I very much thought of, what else, like what am I doing with my life? I think you have to zoom out. I think zooming out is good, and not just looking at your career as something you do, but it's a huge portion of your life. Like you're going to work more than anything else. And so I thought there was like a moment a few weeks where it's like, do I do this thing? Like I don't even know what it is. I don't even know how it's going to work, but I just feel like that is better. I don't know. It just makes more sense in my head. And what kind of pushed me to actually changing and making the pivot was thinking about, well, when I'm 90, what am I going to regret more? And it was such an easy answer. It was, I'm going to regret not thinking that this idea, like this problem that I think I want to try and help solve, like if I never explore that, then I'm going to be really kicking myself in 60 years or whatever that I didn't at least try and find out, like what we were talking about before. And I think a lot of what we're talking about, I think career clarity, I'm going to try and explain from a book called Your Purpose is Calling. It's a book that I read a couple years ago once I had made the jump to start Called Up Coaching, my first business. But it made so much sense when you think about it in terms of, and I think, Taylor, it relates to your story too, of everything that we're kind of after with our career. And so the way they describe it in the book is in three different ways. It's not three different ways, but three kind of segments that make up your career. Number one is calling, number two is roles, and number three is expressions. And so number one is your calling. It's when you feel nudged or pulled towards a specific work, when you develop a passion to serve others in a specific way. it's like a field you want to be a part of, a problem you want to solve, and a calling is pretty general or vague. And so for you, it was like, telling sports stories or like being involved in sports and stuff like that. I think, for quarter life clarity for me, it's like help quarter lifers gain clarity. I wrote that down, but it's kind of more just like helping people almost get their life started after college, because there's so much and it's so hard to figure it out and so much that we didn't learn. But calling is like such a general, like you had the calling right when you jumped into broadcasting, I think. Like your calling has been right the whole time, as has mine with starting a business with college kids to help prepare them for their futures. Like the callings were both right there, but I think the roles is the next thing that really changes quite often. And it is exactly what it sounds like. But to explain that, roles can be thought of as a job title. Roles are specific functions and responsibilities we carry out for certain periods of time. So this is what your job title is essentially, right? Like you were, a local news broadcaster, right? Or I was like an engineer. Those are the roles. And so what that means is, right, for you, for your calling of telling sports stories, let's just call it that. You did this thing for 7 years where you're on TV, you're doing that, and now you're, pivoting to this thing of like kind of creating your own thing, podcasting, all this stuff. And that's you like changing roles, right? You're within the calling, but you're changing roles. Same with me. And then, expressions are the ways someone expresses their personality in their work. They're the ways that we carry out our roles based on our unique identity. And so for you, Taylor, it's like, that's your personality. That's your own unique spin that you bring to telling sports stories, to whatever your calling is, to the way you run your podcast. Like all those things, what makes you, like it's important to lean into that in your career, because the example they give in the book is a teacher example of teacher A follows traditional lectures and stands in front of the class, examples, concepts, quizzes, tests, all that. And then teacher B has a YouTube channel that uses music, video, art, all this stuff. And I think the point within that with the expressions is both are true. Both can be right, but it's a matter of like, this is another point for figuring out who you are is, what's your unique personality? What are the gifts that you have that you can make your own spin on this thing? And I think people love that. Like people fall in love with other people being themselves in their roles. And so I think the issue sometimes is we confuse calling with roles, and you can feel like you're like not doing the right thing, or your career is wrong, so to speak, but you're just in the wrong role. Like your calling can still be correct, but the role can be wrong. And I feel like that's a lot of where quarter lifers might be of like, well, yeah, this is generally like another way to think about the calling is like the problem that I want to contribute to solving. And how do we do that now? And so I think, I don't know, hopefully that paints a better picture to think about this whole career thing a little bit more.
Yeah, I feel like a question that I always asked myself was, or a couple questions, I guess, is like, what do I want to be known for? Like, what do I want to contribute, that can impact other people? What kind of impact do I want to have? What do I care about? And I think the biggest thing, like when it comes to figuring out your, I guess, calling, right? And like you said, like the roles part can look different depending on the person, and the same thing with, your expression of that.
Yeah.
But taking like, okay, what skills do I have? Like, what are my God-given talents and abilities? Because everyone has a unique set. And then what am I passionate about? Like, what do I love? What can I not stop talking about? What problem do I want to solve? You know, asking yourself all of those kinds of questions and figuring out a way to like marry those. And then also, how do I make money doing that?
Yeah.
And then it
exactly.
turns into a career, right? But I think understanding, like, it's a lot of like self-awareness of understanding yourself. And even within broadcasting, like the expressions part, it relates a lot to, you know, my experience in broadcasting, and like what they always say is like finding your voice. So when you first start, you're just trying to like be the, you know, broadcaster with the voice and the, you know, the sitting up straight and talking a certain way, like very robotic. But everyone has a unique voice. And I would say, you know, you have the people that are super opinionated and loud, and then you have the people that are, you know, just having fun with it and like just enjoying themselves, and like it's almost like a big game. And yes, it's not that serious, and it is literally a game. But
Yeah.
then, you know, for myself, I'm more of like an empath and somebody who wants to like inspire other people. And so knowing that about myself in the work that I did, like I don't want to try to go and be like Stuart Scott, rest in peace, but like he is an incredible highlight teller and storyteller in that way, and just like having fun talking about sports. That's not me though. Like, yes, I have fun talking about sports, like, you know, when I need to, but more of like what I think is my purpose within the sports media space has always been the stories. And because I've been so impacted and inspired by so many sports stories, you know, and I think that like people connect to that because when you see athletes or teams or whatever it is, like overcoming things and just like the journey that people go on through sports that's broadcast on this huge platform and that you love and you get so connected to and attached to, you can relate then back to your own life. And it's very inspiring, you know? And so I think that's always been what I felt like my purpose was, is to like bring people those stories.
Yeah.
And utilize my like empathetic personality to do that.
Yeah.
So.
Is there any like moment or story that you can think of when like sports really helped you through something challenging?
I always go back to, like I mentioned, my first 2 years in Providence were really, really hard. And I was having times where I was thinking about, am I cut out for this? Am I even good at this? I feel like I thought I was when I was in California, but maybe like I was in a really small TV station and I was good enough for there, but I'm not good enough for the next level. And I was having struggles with that. And I wanted to give up. I mean, I started in that moment. Like I thought my days were limited. Like I was not going to make it my 2-year contract. And so I started looking for jobs. I was really kind of panicking. And then I remember, you know, my favorite athlete has always been Derek Jeter, Tom Brady too, but Derek Jeter.
Derek Jeter's better.
He's the best.
You're a confused Connecticut fan.
I know, I am.
Oh,
Patriots and Yankees. Anyway, I just like the teams that are good. No, it seems like that though.
Yeah.
But no, Derek Jeter, he runs the Players Tribune, which is where players can write their own stories essentially, and he published what was a letter to my younger self. And I want to say it either came out or it was being circulated right at this time that I was struggling so bad in that job. And I remember reading it, and he's talking about, you know, how terrible the transition was for him from getting drafted out of high school by the Yankees, going, and like, this was his dreamed of being a Yankee, like Yankee shortstop. He would talk about it when he was a kid, you know. And then makes it there and is failing constantly, like at the plate his first year. And then the next year he's failing, you know, in the field and committing all these errors. And he's alone and crying to his parents on the phone saying that he wants to quit and he wants to leave because he's away from home and it's hard and doesn't know if he's cut out for it. And I think reading that, and there was a point in it where he said, but what if you didn't? And it like gave me chills because obviously he's Hall of Famer, one of the greatest Yankees ever, and just an iconic sports figure. And all of that happened after all this failure, you know. And like, what if he didn't push through all of that? And like, look who he became. And so I think that really like hit me in that moment of, okay, you're not just gonna run away like you're failing now, but you're going to figure it out. You're going to get good at this. You're going to do it, and you're going to leave on your own terms if you choose to leave this industry. Like, it's not going to be that you got pushed out because you weren't good enough. It's like, all right, like buckle up and like get to work kind of. And so I feel like that was like a huge pivotal moment, because I started out at this TV station feeling like I didn't even know if I was cut out for the industry. I didn't know if I was going to get fired. Like I was really down bad. To by the end of me being there, I got offered a promotion that I didn't even ask for. I, have great relationships with my bosses. They would have wanted me to stay if I wanted to stay. And so, got great feedback from the people that I worked with and managed. And it just kind of goes to show, not to give up and what you can do if you push to that next level, and you really just like dig deep. And so there's been so many moments in sports, but that's one like very recently that I feel like I still think about it all the time. Like, what if I had never read that, and like, where would I have been? And look at everything I was able to accomplish since then, and all I've been able to experience because I didn't give up,
Yeah. I've read that recently. I read the Jeter Players Tribune. It's so good. If you haven't seen that, even if you're not a sports fan, like, I would check it out. Take you a couple minutes. It's definitely, it's one that hits home, especially if you're struggling, especially if you're going through a hard time. It is so inspiring of, what if you don't, like, that was the big message. Yeah, what if you don't quit, I guess.
A couple years later, you'll have 4 World Series.
Yeah, literally, yeah.
By the time you're like 22.
Yeah, exactly.
However old he is.
And so I do want to, still kind of hover around this, to go back to last year for you, of deciding to pivot, to leave everything that you had built up to that point. Were there any other struggles that came with, leaving that job and kind of starting, I don't want to like starting over again?
Yeah, I feel like, as much as I knew that it was time, I think like I definitely had hopes that some big job was going to be right around the corner. And I felt like it was definitely a leap of faith that I was taking. And that, something not necessarily in like the local sphere, because that's really where everything that I've talked about with like the work-life balance and the difficulty of that, that's really where that lies, is more so in like the local news space. It's in all sports, because sports happen at night and on weekends, and you're always going to have an element of that, but local news was really the difficult like work-life balance one, I would say. And so when that wasn't happening and things, I was getting close to things and then just was coming up short, like runner up for like all these great jobs. I really had to like do a lot of like introspection of like why I feel like I need this so badly. Like, why do I feel like I need to get this big job? And of course, like, I wanted to advance my career and I'd been working hard and all that stuff. But I think the more time that went on, it was a lot about like, well, who am I without this title? Like, I think a lot of times, we're introduced by our careers before anything else. And so, I was, oh, you're like the sports reporter who covers the Patriots. Like, oh my gosh, you were at the NBA finals. And like, yeah, it's amazing. Even seeing these things, like, this sounds so crazy, but like seeing all my sports posts like get further and further down on my Instagram, and I'm like, wow, I'm just a normal person. Like, what's going on, And so like needing to like really figure out or like wrestle with, my identity not being in that job, and that like I'm the same person, whether I have that or not, like my value is the same. And I think like really just doubling down on the faith aspect of my life, and knowing what God says versus like what the outside world will tell you of, you're less valuable because you're not, on the sidelines for the Patriots every week anymore, or you're not covering the Celtics anymore, or whatever it is, like in person. And I think, those like intrusive thoughts come in, and you just have to like really just like, I don't know where I would be without having the faith aspect of it, because it's so easy to fall into the idea that like your career defines you. And I fear that so many people who make it to the top, even in like the broadcasting field, like if they don't have that, and like you see so many times of people, getting laid off, or the network wanting to move in a different direction, like it's very cutthroat. And I've always known that. And so I think that's why faith was so important for me from the beginning, to like make sure I kept that. Because I always knew, like, yeah, it's my dream to go and be a sideline reporter, but I may make it there in 3 years. Like, there's somebody else coming up that they want to go in a different direction. And like, I can't be like destroyed by that. Like, I can't have like everything poured into that, where that's, my complete identity is like being that thing. And what if I don't get there? And that's also a very real possibility in the field that I was in too, is I could work so hard, and like there is an element of like, people say luck, divine timing, really just where God wants you. And there's that very real possibility that that's not his plan. I remember talking to my dad about it, and he was like, this is Taylor's plan for Taylor. This is not, you don't know God's plan for you. Like, you can't keep like saying, well, oh, but God delivered like this and that and this and that in my career so far. Like, so it felt like he really wanted me here. And I remember my dad just saying like, yeah, maybe he wanted you there at that time, but that might not be his plan for you anymore. And like, you need to be okay with that, and just understanding and seeing other people go before me that have, been in and out of the industry, and just knowing deep down that that's not my identity, but also still having those moments where I have to go through that and feel and really like shed those thoughts of, this is what makes me valuable, or this is what like is special about me, is that I do this thing. And in reality, it's like, no, it's the things that got me there that are special about, and it's God that's special about me. And like, I just am inherently valuable. So having to just like double down on that, I think has been, it's tough, like going through things like that. You go through ups and downs and good days and bad days, but I wouldn't trade this time of having that like identity struggle for anything, because I feel like all it's done is, made me stronger, because I know that there, like throughout life, there are going to be other moments like this where you can find your identity in things, and like you just have to be reminded that that's not like your identity can't be in anything that can be taken away from you, because like, what are you going to do if it is, and when it is?
Yeah, not only when it's like taken away, but yeah, when it is hard. Like, I feel that plenty, where like you pour your identity, you pour everything into this one thing, and when you have a bad day, like when something goes wrong with that thing, or you have a bad day with it, if it is your job, if it is your career, then that makes you feel terrible. I mean, it's the same thing with like a relationship, same thing. If something is off there with that person, then you're a mess too. And I'm not saying like you can still be empathetic, and I'm not saying you don't still feel feelings when things are going bad in certain areas of your life, but I think there's a difference between that, like being able to feel the emotion of, yeah, this sucks, versus I don't know who I am, or I'm like destroyed,
right? Like the control of it, like wanting to control it so badly. I think that it's like been definitely something for me of like letting go and surrendering and letting go of that control, because I do fall into those patterns of trying to control things. And this has been like the ultimate, I feel like, test of that, because we are truly never like fully in control, So I think that that's definitely been something that this has taught me and brought me through. And I mean, you're right when it comes to, people who tie so much of themselves to things, and they just can't function. And I think, I've had my moments where I've been upset and been like, all right, God, where are you? Like, why did you put me through this, or why am I feeling this way? Like, being upset and whatever it is. But ultimately, like, just having a knowing and a faith that like everything is like he's working everything together for good and it's going to be okay. And I think having that even when you go through those emotional days and ups and downs, because like at the end of the day, we're all human, we're going to go through that stuff. But just having that knowing has been super important. And I think just it's forced me to like really go back to that. Like I feel like I've said that so many times, but sometimes it's easy, even I remember when I got the promotion feeling like, I worked so hard for this. And it's like, yeah, but there's an element of like this, God did this. I didn't do this. Like the circumstances of how I got that job, like it's crazy. I could have never tried to do that on my own. I could have never forced that to happen. So I think going back to having that proof in my life of when I do surrender and when I let him write the story, and obviously like you can't just sit around and do nothing. Like you need to, take inspired action and, follow his lead. But I think just being reminded through like the identity piece that like so much of life, like we try to control, but we can't. And especially like our identity and, what we have right now, like it's all temporary. It's all fleeting,
Yeah. I think so often those the things we put our identity in are good things, like your job, your relationship, money, even. Like I think it's hard to do that, but at the end of the day, God's like after your heart, and when those things are in the way, like you're prioritizing those, your identity's more fulfilled in those things. I think that's when he's like, all right, well, we're gonna get rid of those things and it's gonna be hard, but I'm gonna be right there with you through it. But I'm doing this for your good because of what we're talking about, of when those things maybe outside of that, when things do go wrong with them, when they do eventually go away, because they're gonna, then what? Right. And I do like the whole money aspect of it too. I mean, I think that's important. Some people might be thinking about changing jobs, changing careers, just quitting their job without a plan, taking a pay cut. I mean, I know I've dealt with that, but how did you deal with that, leaving from like a, the top job, probably making pretty good money, to then probably like taking some sort of a pay cut?
Yeah.
How was that?
Yeah, I think for me, it just wasn't even a question. Because I felt like, at the time I'm 28 years old, I'm young enough where like, I know I'm going to make money again, right? Like this I don't need to stay in this place. And like, I just know it's going to get harder and harder to leave the older I get. So it just really felt like, and especially the contract situation, I think my situation is different because I was on a contract. I think if I had just had a full-time, like it was a full-time job, but like I had to sign contracts every, 3 years or so. And I think if it was just like, a never-ending full-time job, I probably wouldn't have maybe left when I did. I would have, waited until I had things more figured out. But I think that was going into like just the trusting and the faith of it all, of like, okay, this is, the timing is kind of set for me, and this is like a clean break, and this is, when I'm taking this leap, and just trusting that like God has a plan, honestly. But I think, when I think of other people who are thinking about, leaving, everybody's situation is different, right? Like not everyone can just leave their job. I have like privilege in that way, of family support. And so I know that. And I know that if I didn't have that, I would have had to stay. Like I wouldn't have had a choice, But I think for me, it was more of like just knowing that, I'll get another job eventually. Like it's not like I'm never going to make money for the rest of my life ever again. And this is like a period of like not making as much money and, being more set back. But ultimately, I just felt like I didn't want to waste any more of my life just knowing that it was going to get harder and harder the longer that I stayed in that place, and the feeling of just such a lack of peace
Yeah.
And just knowing that like this is not where I'm supposed to be and I need to take this leap. And I fully just have so much, I had so much faith in taking it.
Yeah.
Honestly, like that's the only thing that I could
Mm-hmm.
probably say, because just knowing that like, okay, this is what I feel is what I'm supposed to do and where my peace is at, and it's going to work out. Because again, like God works all things together for good. So that's, I don't know, that might not be as deep of an answer as like, you know, or as strategic of an answer, but it's really like when things don't make sense, I think that that's the only thing that does make sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think no amount of money can trumps, at least personally speaking, can trump the fact that, yeah, you don't have that piece. Like, I felt like, cool, my bank account's growing, I'm making good money, but okay, like it's a number that I see in an app. Like I don't know. I think everybody's got a different view on money, but to me, it didn't matter as much. Like I wasn't willing to sacrifice peace, kind of like the rest of my life, selling it to this job that really doesn't mean anything to me. Like my calling was wrong, going back to engineering. Like that part was off, and so I was like, what am I gonna just do a pointless, like something that doesn't matter to me
Yeah.
for the rest of my life? And I do want to just describe maybe the moment that I decided to quit my job is kind of an interesting story. And I tried to tell it. I did tell it on a podcast a few weeks ago, but I feel like I didn't do a good job. So I want to try and share that again. And so I was on a men's retreat through a church. I wasn't really super involved in church at the time, but 2022, I was taking a lot of action. That's what I said. 2022, take action to figure out what am I doing with my life. And so I said yes to going on this men's retreat with my dad through a local church. And it was uncomfortable. It was not something I wanted to do. I thought it was weird. And it ended up being great. And it's where I decided to actually make this decision. And it was the last night of that weekend. And, you know, we were doing this thing. It was a very, like, intimate moment, but intimate in the sense of, like, between me and God moment of just peace, quiet, and to take a step back, like, all that weekend, I'm, like, wrestling with this idea of quitting my engineering job. And I knew I had a meeting with my boss on Monday. Like monthly meeting where it was like, that would be a pretty good time to do it. I had this idea of what Called Up Coaching, the first business was. I had an opportunity. I knew I could go to my alma mater and like start this thing. So the things were there, but like the money didn't make sense. There was no, like it just, that was the biggest thing. The money didn't make sense. You were leaving a job, also everything that you had built, you got your degree, and all that stuff was like you were going to throw all that out in one move. And so I was wrestling with it. I was talking with people that were in faith, trying to get more advice from like God people. It was like, you guys got to have better answers than the other people I'm getting advice from. And a lot of them were also saying like, you know, maybe you should wait, you know, hold off on doing this, like test it out, try and do some things around here first. And that was not what I wanted to hear. I wanted someone to come out and say like, yeah, you should go for it, man. And so jump to that moment where I'm in that intimate moment with God, and I wish I could remember the exact words, but I just remember kind of asking like, are you sure? And it was such a clear and immediate like, yes. Like it, because he knew I was wrestling with it. Like I felt it so heavy on my heart. At this point, he had kind of given me this idea 2 months prior, and the gears were turning of like how I could actually do it and would it make sense and all this stuff. And it was just a very interesting, like stop listening to them, like trust me and this like feeling thing that I put on your heart. And I was like, well, that's awesome. Cause that's sometimes I'll think about now is like, did I just kind of like conjure that up myself? Like, I just wanted to hear that.
Yeah.
But I went out to, it was on a lake, and I went out after that like event sort of ended. It was at night, and I just needed to be alone and be like, again, like, are you sure? And then again, it was like that immediate yes.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it was what I wanted to hear, but it was what I wanted to hear because it was on my heart for so long of like, for a year, 2 years, wanted to quit this job so bad and didn't
Mm-hmm.
know how. I didn't have an out. I didn't have anything else that I would do instead. And finally I had it, and I wanted to run, talk about being all in.
Yeah.
I wanted to run towards it so bad, and no one was really telling me that. And I just wanted that reassurance. And it was just a moment of like, also looking back now, it's like just trusting God, because everything since then, I've needed to rely on him more than ever. Of like, things don't make sense, money, ideas, what you're doing, it just doesn't really check out in terms of what I would call normal.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, it was just an interesting moment. And so in that moment, when I got that second confirmation, I immediately texted my two friends who were already up where I was thinking about going at my alma mater coaching. And I was like, guys, I'm coming. Like, I'm going to quit my job on Monday. And, luckily I had a place to stay. There was a room in the house that they were living in. Like, things like that made sense. But I guess I share that because I think it's different for everyone. Changing your job, changing careers, it's hard. But I think just to the faith piece, I don't know. It's even if you're not in faith, just though God puts things on your heart, I think. And I think especially when it's so consistent for so long, in a sense of, it was a couple months. It was, you could argue, a couple years for me. And I think when you've dealt with that so long, I think it does just build up in you.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got like that divine intervention moment. But I think eventually, like, you do just have to walk through that door that God might be opening for you. And then it's like all trust from that point on of like, I don't know how this is going to happen. I honestly didn't have anything on paper of like what I was going to do for this program. I had a general idea, but I moved up to Springfield and was like, all right, day one, like, what are we doing?
You just had the conviction.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would say for myself too, like the way, you dive into something and it maybe doesn't make sense and you feel like it's, from God, and that's how I felt, but for, I had my moments, like I've had my moments where I'm like, did I do the right thing? Like, was that stupid, and now looking back, like I can confidently say, like it's made me dive into my faith so much more that, and I had a thought the other day where it was like, yeah, from the outside to other people, it seems like I had this great job. I was making good money. I was on the court when the Celtics won a championship. Like I was doing all this awesome stuff and I love sports and I was working in it and I, was the boss. I was having more of a work-life balance. Like everything was great. But I thought about like, what does God care about? And God cares more about me in this moment, going through it and diving deeper into faith and improving my relationship with him so much more than me in that career to look flashy to the outside world. Mm-hmm. And that's how I have felt the validation of like, even though I'm still in it and I'm still figuring things out to an extent, that I know that this was where God wants me to be. And I have faith in that. I always go back to like the verse in James where it's like, consider it pure joy when you face trials of many kinds, because it produces perseverance. And I think I speak that over myself a lot during this time, but it's so like, it's literally like, it's the truth, that's maybe why God brings you through things like that don't make sense to other people. And when you struggle and you have to completely surrender to him. And I think that has been, part of my journey in all of this.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, God wants your heart. He doesn't care about all the other stuff, like we said. And there's so many different ways that he does that. Yeah, something also like just in the whole changing jobs conversation, something that I came across relatively recently that I think might shed some light on, should I change a job? It's called the Odyssey Plan. Not my thing, but I found it on social media. It's 3 questions from a book called Designing Your Life by Bill Burnett and Dave Evans. And it's 3 questions. Question number 1, what does my life look like 5 years from now if I continue on my current path? Question number 2, what does my life look like 5 years from now if I take a completely different path? Question number 3, what does my life look like 5 years from now if I take a completely different path and if I don't care about making money and I'm not worried about what other people will think? And I haven't done that exercise myself, but I feel like it's a really good one. And honestly, the one that I thought about most for me is question number 1. What does my life look like 5 years from now if I continue on my current path? I feel like sneaky, that question will give you a lot of clarity. How does that make you feel? Like, I think also how you can easily do that is look around at work at the people that are 5 years ahead of you, 10 years, 20 years ahead of you. That was something that I did. And I would just look around at work and be like, I see they're great people, but I just see the way that they operate. And like, that's not me. I don't feel like I don't want to sit here for the rest of my life. And also when the calling was wrong, it was just like, this is not right at all. And also, by the way, I'm hearing, it's so funny. I think working in an office, it's like Mondays are funny of like, how was your weekend? It wasn't long enough. Like I heard that so often, and I don't know. I think just the awareness around that, it was just like, I can future cast how my life is kind of going to go. Yeah, there's plenty of good things with it. The money's good, this and that, but my soul is on a completely different track, and I can see what my life's roughly going to be, and I'm not okay with that. And that's what triggered it for me of like, well, now what? Right? And it was hard. I think it's hard to make a career change when, it's the degree I got and my parents paid for my college. So it was like, I'm going to tell them 2 years into this, like, thanks guys, but I don't want to do this at all. Yeah. And I think there's a lot of obstacles that can get in the way, but at the end of the day, it's that regret. Like, are you really gonna, if you say it out loud, are you really gonna let those excuses, those things, the fact that you got your degree in this, your parents paid for it, the money's good, whatever those excuses or things that are keeping you there might be, when you say those out loud versus the peace, the purpose, all these other things that you aren't getting from where you're currently at, it was no contest for me.
Yeah. I think, I've become an inherent like risk taker, I think, just because of like things that I've gone through in my life. And it's very much for me like having a higher view, like that 300-foot view of like, okay, what is life? Like, what is purpose? All of these things. And like, we're not promised tomorrow, right? Like, we're getting so deep here. But no, like I felt like I'm not going to waste my time doing something that like, I'm blessed to be here. I'm lucky to be here, like on this earth and be able to pursue what I want to pursue and do whatever, live life and enjoy life. And I didn't want to, like, if something isn't serving me anymore, I don't want to continue to fuel that. And I think I've like over time become very like abrupt with that. But I think, going back to like the first question there, I feel like with my career path, because it's not like a direct like corporate ladder that I was looking at, it was always a little bit harder for me. And I think I always clung to the exception and not the rule. Like there were certain jobs and certain people's lives that in 5 years I would love to be living, but then what's the majority? Like what's, not to say that like if, you are meant for that great situation, like maybe you'll get there, but looking at the overall majority of people in the field that I was in and realizing that there's a small percentage of people that I actually would aspire to have my life and career be like was very telling. That I think when I was first getting into the business, I was more naive to, like I just always thought the best was always going to happen. And I just have to work hard and believe in myself and, trust God and it's all going to work out. And that might just not be his plan for you. And that's okay. But there's, purpose in everything.
Yeah. And talking about the to go back to the Odyssey Plan thing, I think the question number 2 and 3 where it talks about, if I take a completely different path, like that's so vague in general. And I think shedding some light, some clarity on what that might be, I think is important. Do you have any thoughts on just how people can think about that if they are thinking about like I do want to make a career change, but I don't know what it would be?
Yeah, I think that's something that I've gone through because, you think you have all this passion for something, you're going full steam ahead, you have a direct path and plan, and then you realize that it's not what you thought it was and you're
Mm,
not happy and you want to pivot or shift, but you don't necessarily know what that looks like.
mm,
I think that's something that I've definitely, like, even to this day, like, still have to check in with myself about, like, what is it that I really want? Like, what do I actually want my life to look like in 5 years and stuff?
mm,
Um, and I think the best thing that you can do is like what you did and like get still with it because I think most people know. I think that deep down, and sometimes it takes doing those exercises of like, what am I passionate about? What am I good at? How can I combine
mhm,
those? How can I make money out of that? Um, but I think deep down, like, how you want to spend your days. Like, if you had a blank slate and money didn't matter, kind of like the question says, like, what would you do with your time? How would
mm,
you fill your days? And like, what's the purpose behind why you want to do that? And so how can you turn that into a career? And I think
mhm,
it's really just about like getting still. Yes, you can have other people pour into you and give you counsel and things like that, but a lot of times deep down and
mm,
it's so personal, and like praying about it if you're a person of faith is definitely a good idea.
mhm,
But yeah, I think just taking away like the fear out of it, and that's why the question about like if money didn't matter is a good one
yeah,
because a lot of times it's that, and sometimes what that looks like is not a clean break like what we did, and
mhm,
sometimes that means like, okay, how do I maybe like go part-time or get like some kind of bridge job that allows me more flexibility. um Honestly, chat gpt is a good source.
let's
Like,
go.
if you just type in, you're like, hey, this is what I want to do, this is what I
Mm,
do, but I need to make money while I'm trying to pursue this. How do I
mhm,
split up my weeks? How do I split up my time? And
yeah,
chat gpt will give you a whole plan. It's like, okay, use this hour to do this, and like look for jobs like this that are remote or hybrid, or you can, where you have time to work on your own projects and
yeah,
stuff that will either utilize the skills that you have or like help you build skills
mhm,
that will help you in like your own project that you want to you
mhm,
work on, or your own business. Like, if you want to be in content creation, like maybe jobs in like marketing or content or
mm,
whatever
mhm,
that are a little more like low maintenance, maybe it's remote or hybrid, and so that you can work on your project while also like have more flexibility in your schedule. So
mhm,
maybe it looks like that. It doesn't have to look like, okay, I give up everything and I go full steam ahead towards, I know we talked about like going full on,
yeah,
but that's not always realistic for people.
mhm,
And I don't think that you have to necessarily do that. Like, there are plenty of, like, I think let me rephrase. When you're in those 3 hours a day that you're working on your project, then you are going full steam ahead. You're fully focused. You're dialed in on that thing that you want to do. But every day, every hour of every day doesn't need to be focused on that one thing. Like,
mm,
a lot of people, need the jobs to support, like, I do that. Like, I'm not fully just living off of like a podcast.
mm,
And that would be a dream, like, of course, to like
mhm,
be full time doing a podcast and doing content. But like, it doesn't look like that for everybody. And so figuring out what the balance of how can I support myself while I pursue this dream, and
mm.
ChatGPT it's a good resource. So,
No, well, it you sparked a memory too for me because so when I going back to the story, I quit my job on that Monday.
mhm.
I also knew I had some sort of leverage because where I was working was everyone was so busy.
Yeah.
And so to kind of counter what I said before, I guess, like I knew that if I left, it was going to put a lot of pressure on other people to like maintain some of the work that I
Mhm.
had. And I knew that. And I was thinking like, well, maybe, I'll float the idea of like being part-time, but like giving them conditions of like, it needs to be fully remote. and I need to, like, there was one part of what I did that I actually did kind of enjoy, somewhat like project management role,
Mm-hmm.
not engineering technical stuff itself.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, at the end of that meeting, it was like, in the beginning, I was like, I'm leaving. In the end, I was like, but, like, I would be open to maybe being part-time, but it has to be fully remote, and
Mm-hmm.
these are the things that I would want to do.
Yeah.
And it worked out. Like, I stayed on, did that for another 12, 14 months. And that is another kind of, like, looking back now, probably like a God moment of being like, yeah, you're gonna need this money. So,
Mm-hmm.
like,
Mm-hmm.
but I think it worked out. And going back to that conversation too, if you are quitting a job or leaving, like, honesty is the best policy. Like, that's how I went in. I was like, hey, this is where I'm at. Like, I do not, like, this just, it's not just the job. For me, it wasn't just the job, what I was doing. I went through that check. Is it the company? Is it what I'm doing? Is it engineering as a whole? And it was engineering as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was like explaining that to someone. It's like, well, there's not really much we can do to make him stay because he's throwing the whole idea out the window and going a completely different direction.
Right.
And
Right.
so because of that, that helped of like, I'm not going to go work for a competitor and like, hey, let's stay on part-time. So,
Mm-hmm.
again, like, to your point, there are nuances to this whole thing, but if you are going to go about quitting a job or leaving a job, just be straight up with people. And the whole process for me was so smooth.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, you also said in there, you know, how do you want to spend your time? Like,
Mm-hmm.
I think so often we think about our careers as just a job. Like, I need to, like, I know that job exists. And so, I might do that. And if you told me 5 years ago, 10 years ago, what I was doing right now for a job,
Mm-hmm.
like, that doesn't exist. That's not a job. You can't
Yeah.
do that. And so I think zooming out again of thinking, how do I want to spend my time and what am I okay with pouring myself into, making certain sacrifices for, what problem am I helping solve that really hits my heart and fires me up? Like, all those things I think go into this equation of what do I want my life's work to be, in a sense, in terms of specific to your career. And so I think there's so many things that fall into that. But yeah, sometimes your job, your career isn't a job that you always knew was a job. We grew up thinking like there's only this many jobs. You
Mm-hmm.
could be a doctor, a lawyer, a
Mm-hmm.
firefighter, like all
Mm-hmm.
those things. But especially today,
Yeah.
you can make anything a job. And I think that's important to know.
Yeah, for sure. I tell people nowadays, like, if you don't know what you want to do, like, just go to business school because anything can be a business, like any of your passions, and like learning the X's and X sports.
Yeah.
But of business will help you no matter what you're trying to do. Like if you are going to college and things like that, obviously everybody's path is different. But yeah, I think there are so many doors with social media and the internet and things like that. Like there are different kinds of jobs that people never thought existed. And I think with that too, something that I've like leaned into is, okay, what am I like excited to do, even if it's not making money right now? Like what could nobody make me stop doing, and do those things? Because if you're willing to do it, not even making money, if you're that passionate about it and you just enjoy doing it, like, and you stick to it and then it becomes a career, like that's the dream, right? Like, I don't know. I think that can bring clarity too, is what am I willing to do for free? Like what would I do just to do it because I enjoy it? And how can I make that into a career ultimately?
Yeah.
But even like I've even felt too with myself, like even if the podcast that I do or like my content or whatever like never becomes a full-time thing, like there are parts of it that I feel purposeful in, like whether it makes money or not, And so I'm good with that. Like, of course, yes, I would love to like make money and have my career be something that feels purposeful. But if I feel purposeful in doing something, like I can always just do it on the side and like have a job too. Like that's okay too.
Yeah.
You know?
I have so many thoughts. But yeah, I mean, I think the goal is you at the end of the day. And what I mean by that is who you become in the process. And so, yeah, if you start, right, if things don't work out in a certain avenue, venture or idea that you have, and you explore it and it does fall on its face, there's probably a great number of skills that you've learned in the process, like tangible technical skills. But there's also so many personal, relational type skills that you've also probably got from that experience. Like, that has been so true for me. And I think those experiences, whether they technically work out or not, they build you into a greater version of you, like that 90-year-old version of you that's just like completely emptied the tank and became that, you know, final version of you. And so I think that's one way to think of it too, of because so much of it is fear when you're thinking about changing, making a big change. And I think just thinking about who you're going to become because of that experience, regardless of the result, but also the skills that you're going to acquire, that if it doesn't work out, like I think about that for myself. If this doesn't work out, you know, going on almost 3 years of entrepreneurship, trying to build a business, if it doesn't work out, I do have full confidence that I could put these things still on a resume and go work a more textbook, like 9 to 5 almost type job that is closer. Like, I would never go back to engineering, but maybe in mental performance or something in sports or just like life coaching, whatever it might be, because of these experiences that I have. And then it's just getting in the room at that point and having the confidence to speak to people. But I think that's just something that comes to mind too, of just how do we get over the fear of doing it?
I think in my industry, it's very common for people to have creative outlets and to start podcasts and to do these things. But like from your background, it's not as common. But I know for sure, like so many people that I've seen, that I know as friends, as people I've worked with, whatever, that have gotten opportunities because of the fact that they started something on their own, because it really stands out. Like, it's a great conversation starter and it does help. Like, it's something that shows a lot about you and the type of person that you are in order to, you know, start something on your own and like have that entrepreneurial spirit, and the ability to just like figure it out, like, and try something new, you know, and also build skills in different areas that might be more aligned with what you would want to do. So yeah, I mean, it can never hurt to start something and try something, I believe. So if there's anything, you know, launch fast and adjust is like something that I've heard said. And I think, you know, you wait for the perfect time. And you know, this was something that was, you know, I was thinking about last night, like, but you wait for the perfect time, and there is no perfect time. Like, you'll never start if you wait for the perfect time. So you need to just start and like, and try and evolve and edit and, you know, get real with what you're doing. Think about it, you know, assess it every once in a while and refine until it either becomes something that, you know, you want it to be or you're proud of, or it could lead you to something else. And there's so many stories of that, especially like in the media space. And I see that more than maybe a lot of people from other backgrounds do, but like you really can never go wrong with starting something. I would say like the biggest thing that you have to, I think, figure out for yourself is like, how much of yourself are you willing to share? Because especially when you get into media, like you're putting a lot of yourself out there, whether that's on, you know, social media or podcast. And like, you know that like the deeper you go and the more you kind of like exploit about yourself, like the more views or the more like potential you have with that content. But how much are you actually willing to share, and what do you want to contribute? Like, I think that's a really important thing, like to have a focus of, why am I doing this bigger than myself? Like, why, other than just, you know, me trying to podcast and have something on my resume, like what am I actually looking to contribute here? What's the purpose, what's the vision, even if you just have like a sentence of like what your purpose is behind what you're doing, have something before you jump in and start something. That's the one thing. But other than that, like nothing has to be perfect. Just do it. Just start.
Yeah. I think, one thing on that is, it's almost like write down, well, what about this would serve me and what about it would serve others? Because there's both, like, especially like thinking about going your own way or whatever career change, that's something. But yeah, I mean, I think we're afraid to be beginners at anything. We're afraid to, like, I've been there, especially being a beginner in public, like putting yourself out there and being a beginner is challenging. And
I have some stories about that.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay. So it kind of goes back to what you're saying about, like, everything kind of leads you, the skills that you gain in certain experiences. Because I mean, I took a job on live television, had never been on TV before. I'd done some like taped stuff in school and whatever, but I was bad. Like, I was not good, but this was my job. Like, I just moved to California again. Like, I went all in. I moved to California. Like, I'm, this is paying my rent. Like, I would cry sometimes in between commercial breaks because I'd get these nasty emails from people about like how bad I was, like that I'm monotone or I have no personality or whatever it is, or like, you suck, like we liked the other guy better, or whatever.
Oh man, that's brutal.
Never the sports knowledge though. I made sure I always knew what I was talking about. I may have been like really monotone and not excited, or seemingly, but yeah, no, it was tough. And like, I think pushing through that because I had to, like, it was literally my job that was paying my rent and I had fully committed to it. Because I had gone all in and had to commit to that and like push through it, that's what allowed me to break through and get really good at it. And for the first like 2 months, I just said, I'm not watching myself because I will nitpick myself to death. I'll just let it like kill my confidence. I'm just putting my head down, showing up to work, like doing what I have to do on TV, never watching it back, like pretending no one's watching me, like just whatever. And then 2 months in, I was like, you know what? I'm going to watch myself. I watched it and like, it was so much better. And then 6 months in, I was a completely different person. And so it is hard, especially when it's public. And I think that's what's helped me like be able to do the podcast and social media stuff because I've already failed in public before. But yeah, it's embarrassing. You think about like, oh my gosh, like, I'm so bad at this. Like, what if, somebody sees my mom in public and they're like, oh, like you're embarrassed for like the people in your life. Like you're just, it's a lot. But I always, at that time, I remember seeing a quote that was like, the only way to avoid criticism is to do nothing and to be nothing and to say nothing. And so you're always going to be criticized. You're always going to have people that have their opinions of you. And another one that I was always going back to too was don't take criticism from someone you wouldn't take advice from. So if it's coming from, my boss or the guy that I work with that's been in the industry for 30 years that has critiques for me, like I am all ears. Like you have to be open. But for the person that's just looking to troll and doesn't really know what they're talking about, don't take it with a grain of salt. Like you don't need to listen to that person. You wouldn't ask that person for advice. Like you don't even know who that person is, know? And so to not take those things to heart and to be able to take the good advice and to grow from that and just put your head down and, do your best, show up and work. And I mean, if you're not getting better in like a year, I mean, then maybe you're not cut out for it or something. I don't know. I mean, but
it's that push or pivot moment.
Yeah, exactly. But I think, early on that stops a lot of people. And I think I did a TikTok on this because I just had this thought. I'm like, your favorite athletes, they all have bad games and we have to watch it on live television. Tom Brady threw a pick 6 in the Super Bowl. There's a picture of him like literally laying out and watching, I forget who it was, but it was the Falcons Super Bowl, run that ball back. And then he goes and greatest comeback ever. And like glory, holding the trophy up. Like even the most successful people on the planet fail publicly. So like, it's not anything new. It's like, in order to be great, you need to push past that uncomfortability. And that's something that I kind of go back to as well.
Yeah.
So some people might think I'm like, oh, you're comparing like podcasting to sports, but it's true. It's
It
it's
is.
similar, you know? Like
Yeah.
that's what I mean by like sports stories really help us
Mm.
all. So
Hmm.
anyway,
No, it's so good. Yeah, I remember. I thought you were gonna say the pick six that his last
that
pass on
too.
the Pats was a pick six,
That too.
and that made
Yeah.
me so happy as a Jets fan.
Of course.
Anyways, yeah, I mean, so many good things to talk about here, and I mean, I could continue to talk about this. One other maybe final thought that I have is, I think, and I might do a solo episode about this whole idea, but I've been thinking about the idea that your dream job doesn't exist.
Hmm.
And what I mean by that is we have this idea in our mind of what our dream job is. That's more of what I mean by it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
exist. Like it gives me all this purpose and energy, and there's never any hard days,
Mm-hmm.
and I love it, and I'm excited to do it all the time. And look, I'm 27. I haven't lived a whole career yet, but in trying to find that myself over the years, I I think have come to the conclusion that it doesn't exist because we make it so a dream job in our mind is so perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And the reality is that it I've at least found in, like, I would say right now I love what I'm doing, but that's not to say that it doesn't suck a lot of the time. Like, I like
Mm-hmm.
to say entrepreneurship is like getting kicked in the balls 6.5 days a week, and then there's one half day that it's like, this is awesome. This is
Yeah.
it. This is why I do it. And I think for me at least, what keeps me going, besides everything we've talked about of like having your back against the wall and being all in, I think it is the, I don't know, somewhat sometimes like psychotic personality that you have of just like, I love challenges. Like, I love like trying to solve seemingly impossible problems.
Mm-hmm.
Some people are just like more wired that way, and I feel like I am. Like, when I started a business, I was like, I could probably go create like a, I don't know, a car wash, and like that make it successful. But like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to do that. Like,
Right.
everybody else does that. Like, I need to create something that's new and me and
Mm-hmm.
different. And my point in all this is I think we do idolize, like, it's I'm going to do that and it's going to be perfect and I'm going to absolutely love it. And having felt that and done that a couple times myself, the honeymoon phase always goes away.
Mm-hmm.
But then what are you left with? It's the, well, yeah, what is the problem that I'm contributing to help solve? How important is it to me, so that when those tough days do happen, because they're gonna,
Mm-hmm.
I am still able to continue because it means so much to me. And it touches on your why,
Mm-hmm.
I think, a lot. But what I'm getting at is like, your dream job, no matter what, there's hard days that are going to happen, but yet you can still say that you love your job.
Yeah, I remember listening to Malik Andrews on a podcast. She's the ESPN host for
Mm-hmm.
NBA Countdown, NBA Today, and she's one of those like exceptions, right? Like, she's 30 years old and she is at the pinnacle of her, like,
Mm-hmm.
she's incredible. She deserves it. She's awesome. Like, she's so good. But I remember hearing her say, yes, I have a dream job, but 4 days out of the week it might be the dream job, and then one day it might be just a job, like, and I
Mm-hmm.
have to get through it. And like, even though it is this dream job that so many people dream of, that I dreamed of, that I have, there are days where the dream job is just a job and you have to push through, and you just have to, you
Mm-hmm.
show up and you do it because you're committed to it, and you have, I guess, just made that commitment to it, and
Mm-hmm.
that's what you want to do because of the other days where it is that dream job,
Yeah,
So that kind of plays into that in that sense.
100%. Any final thoughts in terms of, I mean, I think this whole conversation is hopefully useful for especially people that are considering a career change, but
Mm-hmm.
any like final thoughts or words of wisdom, advice for someone that, just about the whole idea of a career change or just a job change?
Yeah. Advice. I feel like I think with career changes, the biggest thing is like it's never too late. Like I think there's always this idea that, you know, it's too late or it's not the right time. I think depending on, you know, what season of life you're in, like it might look different for different people. Like we said, some people can just clean break, quit and jump right into trying to launch something, and other people it's more of a process. But I think if it's what you feel like you're called to do, that you're going to be able to figure it out, and there's ways to figure it out. So I would say like don't let the fear stop you, because like you deserve a life and a like you mentioned, we spend so much time working. Like you deserve a life and a career that feels purposeful, that you love, that lights you up, you know. And if you feel like that's what you're being called to do, that you should do it, you know. I think you never want to regret in life. Like you don't want to wake up and be resentful of not trying, because I think, you know, when you try things, and even if it doesn't work out and even if you fail, like at the end of the day, you just break even. Like you can always go back. That's what I always thought. Like when I left my, you know, corporate job, it's like I could always go back. Like if I really wanted that job back, like if it was open, I could apply and I could get it back. Yeah. You know, or a job like it, right? But if I didn't try to do something else, I'd never know, and I'd always think about it. And it's worth, like, if you can't stop thinking about something, and like you don't have to, you know, jump on a whim, but like if you can't stop thinking about something and you feel really convicted towards it, that make a plan, and you know, you should do it.
Yeah. That's you don't even need a plan sometimes.
Sometimes, yeah.
Sometimes, like a loose idea.
Yeah. Leap and the net will appear, as I say.
Yeah,
so.
I like that. No, it's been awesome. No, I appreciate you sharing your story. And again, like we could probably talk about this for 2 more hours. But yeah, I mean, it's such an applicable thing, I think, for the quarter lifer. So where can people find you? Like, tell me a little bit about you, like your podcast, Instagram, plug anything.
I'm on all the social media. So like Instagram and TikTok, I have those. Taylor M. Begley, I think, is both of them. And then I have a podcast. It's called BTS with TB. That's the @ on all socials: YouTube, Instagram, TikTok. And yeah, and it's on Spotify, Apple. It's called BTS. So
what does BTS stand for?
Well, you know, that's funny. I always used it as behind the scenes. Like when I was in sports media, I would always post like BTS, like on my story, whether it was like my outfit or like what the studio looked like or whatever I was posting, or the game that I was covering. And then the more I thought about it, I was like, it's also like behind the sports. It could be behind the scenes. It could be behind the sports, like kind of depending on what the episode's about. But it's meant to be behind the scenes, because it's going behind the scenes of, I guess, like my experience and the people that I know and their experience in sports, whether it's moments in sports, working in sports, the things that are behind sports that maybe the average person might not know, but that me and my circle know from just being so involved in it. So it's been fun. I love podcasting. So yeah, definitely check it out. And yeah, follow me on socials, whatever.
Yeah.